What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Crossover U College Hoops Talk podcast, which you can find, as always, right here on the Crossover channel. We're your hosts, Kanaye and Josh, and today we're coming to you guys with a top 10 list of who we think are the best 10 players going into this college basketball season. I know we put out a video about a week and a half, 2 weeks back, maybe at this point, about who we felt the best player on some of our favorite college programs will be going into this year. Now we're going to rank them from an honorable mention and then 10 down of who we think are the best players all around, not just on college programs, in the whole sport going to this next college basketball season. But before we get into that today, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on this channel, please engage with our videos in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about it. It really does help with influencing YouTube's algorithm, getting more people to watch our videos. So let's get right into it with an honorable mention. Me and Josh both have Bennett Sturtz as a guy who was just on the cusp of being a top 10 player in the sport going into this year, but is just right outside.
And kind of a tough one, and I think a disclaimer before this, we're not trying to snub people. If your favorite incoming player is not on this list, don't be surprised. This incoming group of people and this entire set of D1 is insane. It's better than last year. It's better than anything I've seen. I get there's no flag, there's no broom, but the depth is there, and this is why we're putting Sturtz at like 11, basically. But he has the talents, obviously. I was looking great. Cullum is using that almost never before seen D2 to Power 5 transition. And Sturtz has done well against Power 5 teams. He did great against Missouri and great against Texas Tech in the tournament last year. I think he transitions well. The problem is, we've once again never really seen a D2 player play this well at the Power 5 level. He's good, but we're not certain just yet.
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit on all the points there. While he did have a really electric few games in the tournament this past year, he is somewhat unproven at the high major level. We need to see him consistently play against the likes of Big Ten competition, which he will be playing, considering he has moved over with Ben McCollum over to Iowa. We'll be facing that level of competition now this year. But again, it's hard to ignore the video game numbers he put at Drake this past season and just the really stellar performances he had in the NCAA tournament. And I really do think he has all the tools to be a really great player. He knows exactly how to run Ben McCollum's offense. He has a chance to be in the running for a Bob Cousy Award on an All-American team. By no means is him missing our top 10 list of best players going to sport mean that he can't be a top 10 player in the sport this year. That's just how we view him going into the season. That goes for every player on this list going forward. But to move on to number 10, I should say, depending on who you ask, some have him as the number one freshman going into this class. Some don't. We'll get into the other guy later on in this list. I'm sure you guys will guess once we name who this guy number 10 is. But that is Darren Peterson, who is going to be a freshman at Kansas this year. Bill Self has come out and said a lot of great things about Darren Peterson. Really great high school career at Prolific Prep for Darren Peterson. And he has all the tools to be an All-American top player in the Big 12 this year. And while I do think the scoring numbers will be there, I think for both himself and Kansas' success this season, it's going to come down to how efficient he is in being able to get to those numbers.
Yeah, he once again can show everybody that Kansas is great with getting freshman talent. I think this is a great chance for Self as well. And the development that you could see with a player like him, I'm not saying a lot, but me and Kanaye were talking about this. The big thing with Darren Peterson right now is just the potential he has. I think this is, once again, a possible Bill Self masterclass with developing. Kansas is always known for this, obviously. And I was talking to Kanaye off recording on this, but I think Peterson could have a Frank Mason ceiling. I don't know if that's like a player of the year ceiling. I honestly doubt so. But Peterson has played Debansa, and he's actually beaten Debansa at the high school level, to put it out there. And the buzz around him is not to be ignored. I think this is a guy that can really go out on day one and be the main player behind a Kansas squad that is looking a little worse for wear as of right now.
Definitely. I think the success of this season for Kansas is going to be crucial in kind of giving the rest of the nation a good idea as to where that program stands right now in the whole national landscape. And Darren Peterson is going to be a major factor in how good Kansas season ends up being. And to go on to our number 9 best player in the sport going into this next season, that is Zuby Ejiofor, St. John's big man, come back for what is now his 3rd season with the Red Storm under Rick Pitino. Really great year this past season where he was a first-team Big East selection. Now he is the lone returning starter for Rick Pitino. He knows how Rick Pitino runs his team. He knows what Rick Pitino wants. I think that's going to give him the edge over some of the other talented incoming transfers that St. John's has going into this next season. And really, this kind of goes to show you how weak of a year it is for bigs across the sport, where there is not another big man on our list today. I personally have Zubi Ejiofor as someone who I would be on my preseason first team All-American team. And considering that he is the only big on this team, on this list, I should say, and he's at the number 9 spot, just shows you this is a little bit of a weaker year for bigs in college basketball. That being said, Zubi Ejiofor is really, really good. I think he's going to stand out above the rest of the bigs across the sport. Just what he could do both offensively and defensively as an anchor down low, protecting the rim, and then offensively super skilled in getting on the glass, being able to put back a lot of missed shots, being able to just really bully people down low and step out, hit the three, set good screens. Rick Pitino loves utilizing him in ball screen, DHOs, and everything like that. And I think Zuby's going to have a great year. He's my pick for preseason Big East Player of the Year. Could end up winning it. I would have a tough time seeing anyone give him a crazy run for his money there. And definitely someone who I have on All-American watch.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I like Zuby as much as the next guy. I totally understand, and it is unfortunate the big man landscape has changed so quickly. We went from Garza, Edie, and Shedway to this. Not trying to slight Zuby, but he definitely deserves a mention just because he is the best center coming in right now. I think he is possibly in line to be player of the year favorite for the Big East as a whole. But beside the point, I do think there are better players on this list. Mainly that 8th best player, which we believe is Donovan Dent, who is transferring from New Mexico to UCLA. Kanaye, what do you think?
Well, like you mentioned, he's transferring over from New Mexico to UCLA. It is a jump in competition. You're no longer playing at the mid-major level in the Mountain West. You're now in the Big Ten. You're playing Big Ten competition. You're playing more physical opponents. We kind of struggled against Michigan State in the NCAA tournament, so that does slightly concern me a little bit. But it's the numbers he put up last year, video game like 20 a game, 5 assists, someone who's going to come in as one of the top point guards in the country this year. Definitely on not Jerry West, Bob Cousy award watch. And I do expect to have a pretty solid season. That being said, me and Josh both off recording. Josh told me about how he almost feels that while New Mexico's roster last year might not match the talent that UCLA does, that almost might have been a better fit for Dent than what is at UCLA. That being said, though, I think Donovan Dent will figure it out. He's too talented a player to have a bad season, I believe. And I think while his numbers might dip a little bit just considering he is playing better opponents this year than he was last year, I do think he is going to be still one of the premier point guards in the country.
That's very certain. I mean, he is competing in a really strong Big Ten. Regardless how you slice it, he will be probably fighting for that top spot, and he's putting UCLA on his back. I think that alone deserves a big boost for him, and putting him in the top 10, particularly at 8, is a very respectable place. But above him, let's put a slightly better point guard, that being the one and only Todd Pettiford.
Yeah, Tahad Pettiford, I would probably say is my favorite player on this list. I've been very vocal about how much I love Tahad on this podcast. I know he got into a little bit of trouble with the DUI. Hope you learned from it. You know, he's young. People make mistakes. Hopefully it was a one-time thing and he moves on from it and just focuses on basketball going forward. Just considering he is coming back to help improve his draft stock. He could have probably been a first-round pick if he had stayed in the draft, maybe late towards that 30 mark. Coming back to try and prove himself to be a lottery pick. He needs to prove he's a true point guard. Improve upon his already really solid 3 assists off the bench this past year as Auburn's 6th man. I've talked about so much how he showed up for the big games. Big game Tahad. He played well against Houston, led the comeback against Iowa State in Maui, played great against Duke at Cameron Indoor. Really showed up for every big game outside of that Final Four matchup against Florida this past season. Outside of that, I think Tahad has all the tools in the world to be one, maybe even a first-team All-American, and definitely an SEC Player of the Year candidate.
Yeah, listen, we cannot underrate Todd Pettiford. This is not like last year where we didn't know who he was. We know he is the best player in Auburn. He's probably the best player in the state of Alabama right now, which says a lot considering how good Alabama basketball is as a whole. And let's be real with you, there's nothing that's stopping this guy from nearly doubling his points per game. I get it, he's being surrounded by another great squad, but he is the lone returner. We know the experience pays off, and we saw him at the Combine. He was great at the Combine. I think he's grown so much since those early days, and he's probably just as clutch, if not even more. Like, this is a guy that will be competing for SEC Player of the Year, which, honestly, looking at how things are Nowadays, if you win SEC Player of the Year, you're probably a top 3 player overall in the D1 sphere. And Jihad is probably a favorite right now, if you're going to ask me.
Yeah, I would definitely argue he's the favorite too. And going on to our number 6 guy on this list, that is PJ Haggerty out of Kansas State, is coming over from Memphis, where he had a really, really successful season, becoming a second team All American, averaged 20 plus points per game. I want to say it was like 21. Added, I believe, 3.5 to 4 assists with that as well. He's now going over to play for Jerome Tang at Kansas State. Really excited to see how he plays there. I do think he kind of fits the mold of what Jerome Tang likes out of his guards, where he might take on a little bit of a diva at times, but is at the end of the day a really, really good basketball player, which what PJ Haggerty is. And I fully expect to have a huge scoring year. Kansas State isn't a very deep team, but they do have talent in their presumed starting lineup. But I do think they are going to fall back pretty heavily on PJ Haggerty when things get tight in games. And I fully expect him to be able to deliver like he did at Memphis this past season. Granted, he hasn't had great NCAA tournament experience in his career, but I still think that it's hard to ignore a second team All American, someone who scored 20 plus points per game the past season, returning to the sport and not including them in your top 10 list.
Yeah, and Haggerty, keep in mind, was the number 1 overall incoming transfer. There's no other way to put him down past really anything past what we're putting right now, considering how good his transfer class was and how good he was as a player. I think he gets also a little bit underrated considering he played at Memphis. Memphis was upset in the first round last year, if you recall. I think he really is the model guy that Jerome Tang likes. He gives flashes of Marquise Noel, a little bit of Beasley. I'm not saying he can be one of those guys, but a 20-point per game player at the Power 5 level in the Big 12 is dangerous, and he's not to be. I think he really can be. I don't even want to call him a breakout candidate because we know he's good, but I think he's going to break out to the point where people consider him like that. They consider him to be one of the best guys when he was maybe a top 20 player last year. This is why we're giving him 6. Honestly, it feels a little bit of a shame putting him this low because the ceiling for this man is pretty high right now.
Yeah, I think for Kansas State to kind of return to a state of their program where Jerome Tang's job is security is a little better than what it might be right now, PJ Haggerty is going to be a big, important reason why they are potentially able to get back to that point. Just consider how much they are paying him in his NIL, what he's making in NIL this upcoming year. Now get into our top 5. At our 5th spot, we have AJ DeBanza, who me and Josh both personally believe is the number 1 freshman going into this class. Some people have him 2, some people have him 1. Again, all depends on who you ask, what service program you're looking at that rates these incoming freshmen. But DeBanza just looks like the real deal. If you watch college basketball, if you're an avid fan, you probably have seen the clips that have been circulating online from BYU practice of AJ DeBanza playing one-on-one and really just giving it to whoever is guarding him. And they release videos of him going for his max burn. He's hitting nearly the top of the backboard, and he's shooting from those 4-point lines that Kevin Young has installed on BYU's practice court. And he looks like the real deal. I see a lot of similarities in his game between him and Cooper Flagg and how they're really creative in the mid-range. They're able to elevate. I do think DeBanza is more athletic than Flagg. I don't know that he will have the same impact Flagg did, but he does look really good. Someone who I definitely think has a chance to be a National Player of the Year and bring BYU to the promised land this year.
Simply, I can't deny anything. And I don't really have any more words to add to just how good DeBanza can and honestly will be. He puts BYU in a level that they've never been on before. He is like Jimmer Fredette with an additional 4 or 5 inches of vertical and just general height and athleticism. He's a very athletic, tall player. There's a reason why he's the number 1 overall coming in. And he honestly, I can't deviate from any opportunities. He is a top 5 player walking in on day 1, and there's no denying.
Definitely. And getting to our 4th best player going to this next season, that is Otega Oweh out of Kentucky. Otega had that string of, I want to say 7 or 8 straight 20-point games this past year, has a clutch gene, hit several game winners. They got him back. That was one of the most important draft deadline decisions this offseason, I should say. And Otega, hey, I don't know if Kentucky's in the best spot if Otega ends up being their best player, just because I feel like they might rely on him too heavily. But I honestly think that might end up what ends up happening for Kentucky this year. That being said, Otega Oweh is definitely someone who's going to be on first-team All-American watch for sure. definitely in the running for that SEC Player of the Year, right alongside Todd Pettiford, some of you guys of along the likes of other guys that are on the Gators that are play for Florida and Alabama and the likes of those schools, Arkansas. You throw those schools into the mix too, but I think Otega definitely is in a tier ahead of the guys, even Tahad right now, just considering what he did this past year as Kentucky's leading scorer on a really stacked Kentucky team full of transfers. And Otega, I fully expect he knows how Mark Pope wants his offense ran. It's going to be interesting to see how Otega can improve as a playmaker and not just kind of a pure scorer the way he is right now. From what I've seen in the practice tapes, he's looked pretty good. I will say he might need to improve a little bit defensively, but overall, I think Otega's going to be really, really good this year and is definitely someone who, again, can be in the running for the National Player of the Year trophy.
I couldn't agree more. I think Ortega is kind of a guy that needs to be good. I get it that if he's the best player on this team, there is a little bit of a concern. But this is a far better Kentucky team than last year. And Kentucky was very good last year too. Do keep that in mind. I think that walking in, he has a chip on his shoulder. Let's be honest. He could have been drafted last year, like a lot of the guys. Came back, was completely surrounded by other players that were at his caliber, and was, despite that, lifted to be the main player walking in this year. I expect him to have the ball on day one, and I think that that's probably all that needs to be said on him. Great ceiling for the man, and he wants a chip. He wants a chip for Kentucky. He wants to be remembered as a Kentucky great. I can see that in him, and I think if he plays the way I think he will, which if I don't know what the record is with the 20-point per game thing, but he was consistent through the SEC. He did not deviate that much, and I don't think he does here. I really think he honestly could increase his points per game for all we know and become a better playmaker as a whole. So I like him at 4.
Yeah, I think Otega is in store for a really, really big season out in Lexington. And to get to our number 3 best player in college basketball going into the season, that is Yaxel Lendeborg. Just transferring over from UAB to play for Dusty May over in Ann Arbor for Michigan. This is my personal pick for who I think will win National Player of the Year this season. I just think he has to prove himself at the high major level, just considering he's only played against mid-major competition so far. But I just think the talent is undeniable. He can do so much. He can get up and down the floor really, really well in transition. Really solid defender. Can play make out of the post. Really smart with the ball in his hands. Can score at all 3 levels. And brings athleticism, brings toughness. While I do think he does have to prove himself, I think you kind of look at what they did with Danny Wolf this past year and the path line. The mold is there for Yaxel. I think Yaxel has a perfect chance to fit in to a lot of the schemes and actions that Dustin May ran this past season for Danny Wolf. Now, granted, I don't know if they'll be able to run that power forward center pick and roll they did with Vlad Golan and Danny Wolf this past year, but I definitely think a lot of the similar setups they used to get Danny Wolf in scoring position or to get him in positions to play make for others, I think they could do that a lot with Yaxel, perhaps even more. I think Yaxel might be the better transfer coming into Michigan than Danny Wolf was, compared to what Danny Wolf did at Yale, which nonetheless was really, really good how he played there. But Yaxel, I think, is one of the premier players in the sport this year, even though he is somewhat unproven right now.
Yeah, I'm going to say Yax is the better transfer. Well, no offense to the guy, but Yax is the real deal. Player of the Year candidate, Big Ten Player of the Year favorite, perhaps. There's a lot to go off of him, and I think it's kind of a similar scenario to like guys like Dent and Peterson we've said before. He's carrying this offense very exclusively, might be a 20 per game scorer, if not even more. He has a triple-double in last year's at the mid-major level. I get it, we're not putting him in higher because of his experience outside of Power 5, but the way that me and Kanaye were kind of looking at this right now is the 1 through 3, which obviously we'll reveal 2 and 1 in a bit, are kind of interchangeable right now. It's just that he's like 1C to me. And in that scenario, that's the 3rd best. I don't think he can't be number 1. I think there's definitely a good shot he is in line for it. And the way that we've seen him play at UAB makes me believe he can be incredible. But I'm just a tad bit concerned. And for that alone, we're putting him through.
Yeah, the concerns are definitely there, which is why he's not higher on this list. It is also because the next 2 guys are really, really good. The first of those 2 at our number 2 spot is JT Toppin out of Texas Tech. Really kind of out of nowhere year for JT Toppin, really just sprang off several huge scoring nights in January and so forth this past year. He's going to be able He's going to be able to go off for 40 on any given night this year, like we saw this past season for Texas Tech. Really great NCAA tournament for JT Toppin, and I fully expect him to do the same. The thing that worries me is really just Texas Tech's team success overall. Christian Anderson looks really good, but there's not too much talent around the rest of the roster to surround JT Toppin with. I know Donovan Atwell has a chance to break out at the high major level. We'll see what happens with that. And I do worry that it might end up being similar to like a Luka Garza at Iowa type of situation where player's really, really good and wins National Player of the Year, but the rest of the team success is just not there. Nonetheless, JT Toppin is a really, really talented player. 3-level scorer, can do a lot, can get up and down the court, super athletic, does fairly well in the post, especially playmaking wise. But again, scoring numbers are undeniable. It's really a miracle that they were able to keep him out of the draft when he probably could have gotten drafted. I don't know, as a first round pick, maybe in the later parts of that first round, but could have gotten drafted nonetheless. They have him back, paying him handsomely because he came back, and I fully expect JT Toppin to repay them with what should be a potential National Player of the Year like season.
Certainly. I kind of made this comment in the past as well. I think Toppin and Yaks are kind of like reskins of each other, except Toppin has that Power 5 experience, which is
right.
Why we're putting him at 2, but I agree very much with Kanaye. Texas Tech doesn't look crazy good, but Toppin is pretty much the only reason why they can be competitive both in the Big 12 and tournament overall. I don't really know what Toppin's ceiling is. It's definitely Player of the Year, but I don't know how crazy he can be. He's had great nights in the past. I don't know. There's just a little bit of a problem with just Texas Tech itself being not on the level that it needs to be supporting guy. That makes us believe that 2 is kind of where we have to look. Because otherwise, he is the best player walking in. But for our sake and purpose, the number 1 player coming in is Braden Smith. And I don't think there's much of a reason to explain. Smith was great in his previous, 3 years. He led Purdue last year to the Sweet 16, almost beat that 1 seed Houston, if you remember. And he comes back with perhaps the best squad he's had, perhaps even over that 2024 80 team that he was second fiddle with, except now he is that fit. He is that main guy.
Yeah, all Braden Smith has done in his college career is win. He was a 1 seed as a freshman. Of course, we know what happened that year. We won't have to touch on that too much. The next year makes it to the national championship game alongside Zach Edey. That following that year in the offseason, everyone's like, Purdue's going to fall off. No more Zach Edey. Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman, and Fletcher Loyer, they can't lead a team on their own. Hit a few bumps in the road on their way to having a really successful season, I will say, with just being on the cusp of beating that number 1 seed Houston that made it to the national championship game. Braden Smith became the best point guard in the country, was a first-team All-American, won the Bob Cousy Award trophy. It's not very often that you get a first-team All-American return to the sport for another season, and that's what we're getting with Braden Smith. I don't think you can ignore that, just considering he's proven himself at the highest level. All he's done is win. I don't see really an argument that, obviously there are arguments that can be made, but I just don't know if there's one that's stronger in terms of the case for being the best player in the sport going to the season, better than Braden Smith's case.
Yeah, and let's be honest, he's not the best scorer. I think that's probably a guy like Toppin or Yaks. He doesn't need to be because his team is just that good. He's honestly, though, the best passer, probably the most intelligent playmaker on the court, and he has, I think, the best experience, other than maybe another guy like a Caravan, but he's not on this list for other reasons. But you really just chop it any way you want to see it. Smith is the best guy coming in, but like I said before with Yaks and Toppin, it's 1A, 1B, and 1C, and Brandon is just 1A right now. It could totally change, but the way we're looking at it right now, Smith is the best player. He's the odds-on favorite for National Player of the Year in our eyes, and I don't really have anything to change it as of right now.
Yeah, and like you said, Braden's pretty much experienced everything you possibly can as a college basketball player. He has, from what I've heard out of Purdue's camps, come into this offseason, then not just him, TKR, Fletch, that whole crew in that senior class. They've come in with a new mindset this year, and I fully expect a huge season out of all 3 of those guys, but specifically Braden Smith. Yes, the scoring numbers might not wow you, although I will mention 16 points per game last year is still really, really good. On top of what he brings in the assist metric as well. He's the best player in the sport this year. I fully expect him to run it back as a first-team All-American and probably win the Bob Cousy once again. But I think that's going to take care of everything we have on this episode of who we feel are the best 10 players going to sport this season. As always, it goes a long way if you engage with our videos any way you can. And until next episode, we'll see you all next time.